Now, believe it or not, before I got my first $100,000 in stocks, I was actually planning to actually get to my first 1 million. And in reality, what I had in my actual stock market account was about $7. And people told me, Tommy, you have $7. Like, what's the point of planning to have $1 million? The idea is if you have no plan, you don't know where you're actually going and how to actually get there. You know, there's a saying that if you have no plan, if you don't know where you want to go, you are already exactly where you need to be. Basically nowhere, because you don't know where you're going. So the goal is that although this year I actually sold my personal home, so I sold my property, I don't have a single rental property, but I am already making plans to actually acquire one property every single year for the next 5 to 10 years. That's the idea. And in this video, I'm going to tell you my first phase and my second phase, and exactly my budget and how I actually plan on doing all of this. And by the way, as you watch this video, don't hear me say what I'm saying and say, well, that's too cheap, or, well, that's too expensive, or that's impossible, I can't do it. Instead, change that to, how can I do this? And by the way, I read in a book a long time ago that when you put your brain to work and you ask questions like, how can I do this? Your brain starts to come up with questions and answers and ways to actually do it. But when you say, I can't do it, there is nothing more to think about. Your brain halts right there and doesn't continue to do any work. So really ask yourself, how can I do this to actually make this actually work? Now, as always, guys, if you guys are new here, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified, and on top of that, do me a favor and smash the like button. It helps out with the channel. But the first part of this video, guys, is going to be, my first phase is basically, I gotta tell you exactly what type of property I'm actually looking for and why exactly. First of all, I'm looking to buy single family homes or multifamilies or condos. Now, here's why. Single family homes in my area, because again, I am living in Dominican Republic. So understand these numbers, they're going to be cheaper than yours most likely. But when I was actually living in the US, my numbers were a lot more expensive. When I was in Puerto Rico, my numbers were a lot more expensive too. So it doesn't matter, okay? You make the numbers work where you're located, and that's the idea. Or you might be willing to move to make the numbers work. That's also an available possibility. But the idea is single family homes here, guys, tend to be built by regular people. So they tend to most often live in those properties for a long time and usually pass it on to family members. So single family homes are usually kind of rare here, but condos, they tend to move around a little bit more, and multifamily homes tend to move around a little bit more, but they're very few in between. So that's the idea. And condos here, they're not as restricted, meaning I could do whatever I want. If I want to rent it, I want to Airbnb it, those restrictions usually are not here per se. On top of that, I want to buy properties with at least 3 bedrooms and 1 bath. As far as longevity, these homes tend to do a lot more better via appreciation, and on top of that also, I can rent them out to a family for a little bit more money, because it is a 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bath even better, but for the most part, 1 bath is more than enough. On top of that also, my budget is going to be $60,000 per unit, and my goal is to buy these properties for a 10 to 20% discount. Now automatically, you might hear this and say, Tommy, that's not possible. There's no way you're going to get a discount on a property. The answer is you can. You can negotiate it. It's fine. 2008 happened. People got property for pennies on the dollar, or let's just say nickels on the dollar. But for the most part, you can do this today. If a property is selling for 100K, you can make an offer of 90,000 or 80,000. Okay, you don't have to pay retail price, and retail price is the appraisal price. Okay, so the idea is you don't have to pay asking price whatsoever. And most of the times, okay, if you're gonna buy a property and they're asking for 100K and you accept the offer, but then the appraisal comes in at $80,000, guess what? If you don't come up with the money, they're gonna say, well, I'm gonna sell it to you for $80,000. Okay, that's a possibility. So negotiation is completely available and completely open. Now, I do have some rules when it comes to buying these properties. First of all, I want to pay cash for properties, or if I do borrow money, I don't want to borrow more than 50% of the property value. Meaning, hey, I don't want to borrow that much money because my goal is to pay off the property as fast as possible. And that's where rule 2 comes in, okay? Before I buy my next property, that property has to be fully paid off, all right? Because my goal is, again, I don't want to acquire a lot of real estate. I want to acquire enough real estate to basically be sufficient. And for me, my number is to acquire enough real estate to actually make me around $2,000 per month, okay? And to do that, I don't have to go into a bunch of leverage and a bunch of stuff like that, okay? Now, my third rule is I want to get at least an 8 to 12% return on each property. Now, I will take 5%, but only if the property is located in an area where appreciation is going to be running mad or whatever, okay? Because the area is so amazing, it's such a nice property that I might be in for 5%, but for the most part, I want to make 8 to 12% on every property, all right? So those are my rules and what I'm looking for and everything else, okay? That's very important because if you don't know what you're looking for, when you hit the real estate, I'm so into the stock market. When you hit the real estate market, there's so much available, it's just going to confuse you, okay? And if you go into something and then switch over, it just doesn't help you whatsoever. So knowing what you want is super important. And by the way, if I'm going to be buying a property and my budget is $60,000, in reality, I want to make sure that that property is valued at around $66,000 for a 10% discount. If I'm going to get, for example, a 20% discount, I want to make sure, for example, that the property is valued at around $75,000. Okay, so if the value is $75,000, I want to offer $6,000 so I can get a big discount. This basically means I get instant equity and I make my money on the buy, and that's the most important thing when it comes to real estate. So it has to have a discount, not just any discount, at least a 10 to 20% discount because I want to make money on the buy. Super important. Now, number 2, guys, is going to be how do I actually plan on saving all of this money? Well, there are 3 sources that I'm actually going to use to save this much money. Number 1 is my personal income. I plan on saving around 40% of my income to actually get to this goal, right? So next year is the year I'm actually going to start doing this. So that's the idea. So if I'm saving 40%, and by the way, I know folks that say I can't save 40%. Well, try to save 20%. I can't save anything. Well, work a job, another job, part-time, and use that money to basically save because you didn't need it then. So use all that extra money for savings, okay? And I know people that they save 50% of their income or 90% of the income, okay? So it all depends what you're willing to actually sacrifice. So for me, 40% is more than enough. Number 2 is I have money in the stock market. With that money, I'm going to take 4% of my portfolio every single year. And that's going to help me fund my real estate. This way, I don't run out of money in the stock market. It continues to grow, but I also get to take money out for more investing and diversifying into real estate. Number 3 is I have money from the property I just sold. Okay, so that's money I have available to me to actually do this too. So that helps me out a lot. All right, that's the general idea of where the money is going to be coming from. Now, it doesn't mean, for example, that if my goal is to get a property every single year, that I'm going to be able to get a property every single year, okay? It doesn't mean, for example, my budget is $60K, but if I find a really good property at $70,000 with a big discount, I'm not gonna buy it, okay? So it's okay. I have a plan. I have a general idea of where I'm going, of what I want. And if I see something that actually is still a good deal and still within those margins, I will go ahead and acquire it. I'm fine with buying a property and basically saying next year, I can't buy another property. I have to pay this one off first. So that's fine, okay? I'd rather go slow and steady than just be in a rush to actually complete this stupid goal, because it is a stupid goal, right? We all just have generic goals in our minds, which help, by the way, but it doesn't mean you have to buy a property every single year. So keep that in mind. Goals are good, but it doesn't mean you have to just live by them in a way. Goals are there to help you and assist you. Now, how much money would I make from each property, okay? And what is my goal? Again, my overall goal is to make $2,000 per month net from real estate. That's the idea. And here's the breakdown. Now, if my goal is to buy properties at a 20% discount per se, and I'm putting down $60,000 basically, that's what I'm buying it for. The idea is if I'm buying a property that's worth $75K and I want to make at least 8% return, well, the idea is very simple. Multiply this by 0.08%. Right? I'm making around $6,000. Now, because I have no mortgage, but I do have to pay insurance and taxes and maintenance and vacancies and repairs, all these things, I like to always take up, for example, from the top around 70%, well, 30%, I should say. So I'm left with 70% for profit for myself. Well, the idea is I get around $4,200. That is my profit. Now, what is this per month? Well, if you divide it by 12, that's around $350 per property, right? It's pretty good stuff. So that basically means that if I can get $350 per property, well, how long is it going to take me to get to my goal of $2,000 per month? Well, the idea is very simple. Let's run the math here, okay? So my goal is $2,000 per month divided by 350. That equals around 5.71 properties. But we know that you can't buy a fraction of a property unless you're buying REITs, of course. But for the most part, it's like 6 properties. Times 350, that's around $2,100. That basically means in around 6 years or so, if everything goes perfectly. But there are some factors here to actually take into account, right? One is that rent increases every single year on average, right? If you want to be running a fine-tuned machine, you raise the rents every single year, right? That's awesome. On top of that, we also know that real estate values go up, right? So although if I'm doing the things right? If I'm buying 6 properties and I'm paying $60,000 for them, but I'm getting basically like a 10% discount, well, I know basically that, hey, I have around 400K worth in real estate. And if the real estate appreciates by 2% a year, well, every single year, just by 2%, guess what I'm making? I'm making $8,000, right? But these are all like on paper gains per se. So that's pretty awesome. But that's my general idea. But the way I see it playing out is basically most likely by year 3 or year 4, I'm going to have to start borrowing money. And by that point, things are probably going to slow down a little bit. But the first year, I can buy a property, make sure I'm cash flowing, buying in great areas where I actually like the property, I know the area, I live around the area. And that's one big thing, okay? I don't want to buy properties that are basically like 20,000 miles away, or like in a whole different country, or like 2 hours away from me. I want to buy real estate that's like a 30-minute drive or 10-minute drive. And that way I know the area, I know the neighborhood, I know the neighbors, I know the people, I know what to look for, I know what not to look for, I know everything about it, okay? And it's not to say that you have to do that, but doing it this way, it kind of guarantees you more success in a way. And you don't have to go looking somewhere else, because guess what? The grass is usually not greener on the other side. So doing it this way helps me out a lot. And by the way, I should add a little caveat here, guys, that my budget for buying real estate does not include my personal budget to buy my personal property. That's also very important, right? Because one big thing is that most likely, if I do end up moving to like or buying a property in this area, I don't have a personal property anymore. Like I told you guys, I sold it, right? But that cash from that, I took a chunk of that money and I set it aside to buy my next property where I'm going to live, right? Myself and maybe my family if I get married, if God wills, right? Then I'm gonna have that property fully paid off too. But that money is set aside just for that goal. That's the idea. So I might be able to acquire 5 properties in 5 years, but most likely one of those properties is going to be my personal property, and that's not going to be making me any money, okay? Because I live in it, obviously. Or even in 6 years, I might have 6 properties, but one of those properties is going to be my personal property. Now, why would I do this? Why not use all the money to buy rental property and pay for my rent or whatever? Because the goal is, again, my personal financial goal is to have financial freedom, right? And financial freedom to me looks like having very low cost of living and having from passive sources all the income I need plus more to have a very comfortable life. And when you don't have to pay a mortgage to actually live, that makes all the difference, right? Because what do you have to pay for? Well, you have to pay utilities, groceries, and transportation. And if you don't have any debt, those things aren't going to be that much. For making $2,000 a month plus money from the stock market is going to be more than enough for me to live the life I want to, go on vacation, and not really worry about eating at restaurants and everything else in my current area. That's the idea, okay? So I can get to my goal a little slower, knowing I have, for example, security that my home is taken care of and my family is going to be straight. That's the idea. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Comment down below, made it. So I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. On top of up here is another video. On top of up here is my face. Click and subscribe, okay? And comment down below exactly what is your goal, okay? What's your budget? What properties are you looking for? What are their characteristics, okay? All these things matter a lot, a ton. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.